Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me for this webinar today. My name is Keith Benn. I'm the Vice President of Exploration for Mistango River Resources, and it's my pleasure to present to you today an update on our exploration programs in the southern Abitibi Belt, where we have two very exciting projects going on at present. First, as a disclaimer, we are in the mineral exploration and development business. It's a risky business, and all potential investors should be keenly aware of this, and they should also review all of the other statements on this disclaimer. As a corporate update, we have $4 million in cash and an additional $3 million in announced financing. When that financing closes, we will have $7 million in cash with no debt. And we're going to use that cash to explore on two projects that are 100% owned by Mistango Rivers Resources, the Kirkland West project and the Omega projects, both in the southern Abitibi Greenstone Belt. Our major shareholders are Eric Sprott and Orefinders Resources, one of our sister corporations. Our exploration programs are proceeding very well, and our drill targeting for the Kirkland West project is in its advanced stages, and we expect to start drilling in Q4 of 2020, very soon. Drilling on the Omega project is expected for Q1 of 2021. To give you some regional context, we are in the southern Abitibi Belt, where the bulk of gold deposits, as you can readily see from inspecting this map, are associated with, spatially associated with, two major fault zones in this greenstone belt. The one to the north being the Porcupine-Dester fault zone, and the one to the south, the Larder-Cadillac fault zone that I'm tracing with my cursor right now. And in the red dashed oval, we have the district where our two projects are located. The Kirkland West project, just to the west of Kirkland Lake, which is a world-class gold deposit, and our Omega project, which probably corresponds to this or one of these orange dots here, situated just to the west of the Kerr Addison, which is another world-class gold deposit. Historical, former producer, that one. Just to give you a larger scale reference, we're about 500 kilometers to the northwest of Toronto, and situated right on both of our projects, right on or proximal to this major gold deposit controlling structure. Our land positions in more detail, this basically corresponds to the region inside of the red dash oval in the previous map. Our Kirkland West project here, immediately to the west of the Kirkland Lake Gold Camp, which is right here, and immediately to the west of Kirkland Lake Gold's Macassa Gold Mine, one of the world's highest grade gold deposits. And our Omega property, situated further to the east here, smack on the Larder-Cadillac fault zone. Our neighbors immediately to the north, Gatling Exploration, Agnico Eagle and their Upper Beaver deposit to the west. Our sister corporation Orefinders is exploring the McGarry property here, where the historical Armistice deposit is located, and Kerr Addison, another world-class deposit just off to the east here. Okay, so we are on that major regional structure. We are adjacent to two world-class gold deposits, and there are lots of other gold deposits hosted by or situated very close to this fault zone. So we have an excellent postal code. We are located in the right place to be looking for high-grade, new high-grade gold deposits. Now, I'll point out to you here that the Kirkland West deposit, we recognize two different zones in the Kirkland West deposit. The Baldwin zone here to the northeast and the EB zone here. We recognize these as two different zones because the geology of the two is slightly different. Our first phase, highest priority drilling program for Mistango will be on the Baldwin zone in here, okay? I'll illustrate for you in the following slide why we're going to focus there. We're going to focus there because this part of our Kirkland West project is quite evidently sitting in a geological and structural environment that is the western extension of the Kirkland Lake Gold Camp. Okay? The geology is the same. It's composed of, in a brownish green color here, the Temiskaming assemblage, which is composed mainly of metasedimentary rocks, but also some volcanic rocks, intruded by numerous cyanitic intrusive rocks that are shown in purple, okay? These cyanitic intrusive rocks are one of the key vectors to gold for us, because much of the gold in the Kirkland Lake Camp is in fact associated with that rock type, where they are strongly deformed by faults. I also included on this map in black traces here several of the regionally important fault zones that I took from a regional compilation, a public domain compilation. As we proceed in this webinar, I'll show you our Mistango Resources own more detailed interpretation of the structural geology in this region, okay? This southerly structure here is the Larder Cadillac Fault Zone you saw in the previous slide, and to the north, the main break fault zone, which is associated with much of the gold in the Kirkland Lake Camp. And we think that we may have the continuation of that fault zone on our properties down here, okay? We also have a historical gold mine in the Baldwin zone here. It's the Baldwin mine. What you see here to the right is a plan view and a cross section through that mine, okay? It's a busy figure. We don't need to look at the details, but I wanted to include it here for two reasons. One, to let you know that we have compiled, Mistango River Resources has compiled all of the historical data for our properties that helps us to target our drilling program, but also to point out that the deepest level of development of this mine was only 400 feet down, about 122 meters. This historical mine produced gold at a grade of about 15 grams per ton, which is pretty good. That's in the ballpark of the Macassa mine. And it was only developed to 122 meters depth. That is by definition an exploration target that is open, wide open at depth. We've got lots of room to extend that 15 gram per ton potential deposit to much greater depth. And that's what we're going to do. Our geologists have completed quite a lot of field work recently, gathering structural data, mapping the rocks, and also collecting grab samples for gold assay. We found lots of very interesting rocks. Here's one of our famous cyanitic intrusive rocks, strongly sheared, quartz veined, lots of sulfide minerals in it. That's the kind of rock we're looking for. And what we've also found, not surprisingly, is that there are a lot of historical trenches and pits. This is one of the old pits that was probably dates from 60 or 70 years ago. There are quite a number of them out there. They're good vectors, but one of the things that they highlight, all of these historical workings, is that we're in a pretty mature exploration area, okay? A lot of people have walked through this area and broken a lot of rocks in the past, okay? What that tells us is that we must recognize right off the top that it's unlikely, not impossible, not likely that we are going to break a rock in the field and discover the world's next great high-grade gold deposit. What we're looking for when we break these rocks and we take grab samples and we assay them for gold, we're looking for anomalies. We're looking for clusters of anomalies where there's above background level gold in the rocks, in rocks of the type that we know host gold at Kirkland Lake. Okay? You'll see some of those results in a subsequent slide. I'll pass over this fairly quickly. There's a lot of text here, but I want to point out how we go about targeting our drilling campaign anywhere we work, but in this case specifically applied to the Kirkland West project. The first step is to assemble all of the data layers that we can gather. Historical data, new field mapping data, new assays from our grab samples that we've collected in the field, the geophysical data that are available. In our case, we had some public domain geophysical data reprocessed. We have all new maps, and we also have some automated lineament analysis that you'll see. And we have just days ago completed a new LIDAR survey, which will provide us with a very high resolution topography or digital terrain model, as we call it. That is extremely important because we are looking for geological structures here that could be expressed sometimes subtly in the topography, and with a very high resolution topography, we should be able to identify, and we can, in fact, identify these structures. Our next step, we prepare interpretive layers. That's where we use all of those data sets that you see in item 1 here to interpret in detail, in as much detail as we can, where the geological faults are located. Then we combine those interpretive and data layers, and we define drilling targets. We define targets that are going to look like Kirkland Lake type structural and geological settings, as we discussed in the previous slides. We want cyanitic intrusive rocks, we want them deformed by faults, and we also want to look for intersections of different faults or different families of faults, because those types of intersections represent zones potentially of extensive fault damage, as structural geologists call it, fractures and veins where we can hope to find gold concentrated. In the following slides, I'll use the same background in each of the next 4 or 5 slides. It is the first vertical derivative aeromagnetic map that was generated for us recently. And in this particular slide, I've also overlaid some of the results of our assays of grab samples. It illustrates that we are beginning to see already clusters of anomalous gold values. One here, and here there are actually multiple gold values. They're so closely spaced that they don't show up individually, okay? And well, isn't it interesting that we can basically draw lines through these 3 points? And as you'll see, when we do our structural interpretation, it looks like these 3 points do fall along a geological structure, okay? I still have included here the faults in black traces from the regional map. I will replace them in a subsequent slide with our own detailed structural analysis. We also have the automatically generated lineaments that help us with our structural interpretation. That's what all of these traces are that you see here, overlaying on the aeromagnetic map. The lineaments are derived from those geophysical data, by the way. And we also include our geology. And what you see here in with these purple outlines are all of the cyanitic intrusive bodies that we were able to digitize from collections of maps, some of them going back to the 1940s, the maps, I mean, and they are wonderfully detailed maps. We can gather a lot of information from those maps, and we have. With all of these data layers, we built our interpretive map, our interpretive structural map, and what I can point out here are that there are basically 2 families of faults here. One corresponds to the Larder Cadillac fault zone orientation, which is more or less east-west, more east-northeast, west-southwest in this particular area. And that also includes the potential extension of the main break fault zone, which is a fault zone that controls a lot of the gold mineralization in Kirkland Lake. Okay, it apparently can be traced. We interpret it can be traced onto our Kirkland West project. There's also a family of faults that's more north-northeast to northeast striking that we believe could represent a very complicated linkage zone between the main break fault zone and the Larder Cadillac fault zone, which itself is made up of multiple faults here, as you can see. What this indicates is that this whole zone right in here is structurally very complex, okay? And it's also riddled with cyanidic intrusions. This is a good place to be. Geologically and structurally, this is the kind of place you want to be. This is where we can hope to find deposits of the type that have been mined at Kirkland Lake for over 100, well, not individual, well, deposits of the type that have been mined for many, many years at Kirkland Lake. The final step is to define our target zones, which I've highlighted here with white dashed polygons, and I put a little transparent background so they stand out from the geophysical map. These are the zones that we recognize as the highest priority for exploration in the Baldwin zone at the Kirkland West property. In the coming days and weeks, we will be elaborating in detail the drilling program, a 10,000 meter, possibly more than 10,000 meter drilling program that will explore these various complex structural environments, especially where they're associated with cyanidic intrusive rocks throughout this Baldwin zone. That drilling program should kick off in November. Okay, it's planned for Q4 of this year. We expect it to kick off in the first half of November. We're ready, set to go. We're cashed up. We're on the verge of finalizing our drilling program, and we're ready to go. Let's go have a look at the Omega project. Again, we're 30 kilometers or so, probably 40 kilometers to the east of that zone that we just looked at on the previous map. Again, surrounded by our neighbors here, Gatling, Agnico Eagle, our sister corporation, Ore Finders. Most importantly, we're situated right on this mineralized Larder Cadillac fault zone that is also the host for the Kerr-Addison deposit that produced over 11 million ounces of gold just up here to the northeast, not so very far away. 2 blocks of properties make up the Omega project. The first one is where the historical Omega mine is located, and the southwest zone here, which I think has a tremendous upside to it. The Omega mine has been mined historically. The Crown City mine and the Omega mine are located on the property, or the historical mines located on the property. In the 1920s and 30s and 40s, pretty well over 200,000 ounces of gold were produced on the Omega mine property. There is currently a 43101 compliant resource updated in 2013 that provided for over 200,000 ounces of indicated resource and 365,000 ounces of inferred resource. And there is significant upside potential here. We are, again, I can't stress it too much, we're on the Larder Cadillac fault zone, 9,000 meters roughly from the Kerr-Addison deposit. To give you an idea of what the resource rocks actually look like, very strongly sheared rocks, very heavily veined with lots of quartz veining and sulfide veining. This is a strongly sheared sedimentary rock just in the footwall of the deposit. And here a rock that carries 12 grams per ton, so strongly deformed and metamorphosed, it's hard even to know exactly what the rock was. Probably was a volcanic rock. And this is right in the heart of the deposit. On the southwest zone, not as heavily explored. It has been explored, not extensively, but there has been trenching and some historical drilling there, which provides us with some vectors to guide our exploration. I put a couple of photos on here to illustrate the kinds of rocks we found during our very recent prospecting campaigns. In both cases, we have basic volcanic rocks, strongly sheared. You can see the quartz veins here, thin quartz veins, lots of them, parallel to the shear fabric in the rock, and lots of iron carbonate, which is red here in this rock. Again, here we have a thick quartz vein, again, with lots of iron carbonate and sulfides in it. There's a lot of this kind of rock and similar types of veining in sedimentary rocks as well, just to the north, and in sheared cyanidic rocks as well, like in the Kirkland Lake camp. There's a lot of upside here. So we have defined 3 target areas. that we're going to continue working on. We're going to fine tune these a bit more, and then we're going to develop a detailed drilling program here as well for, as I mentioned, in Q1 of 2021. Our 3 target areas labeled A, B, and C. A would be an extension of the existing resource where our structural interpretation is suggesting to us that we may have a splay structure coming from the Larder Cadillac fault zone here. B includes a very strongly magnetic unit here. The hot colors here indicate a strong magnetic signal, and you'll notice that that strong magnetic signal is somewhat overprinted here. That's the way we interpret this. That can be a signal of destruction of magnetite in the rock, which makes the rock very magnetic, and replacement of the magnetite by sulfide minerals and quartz veins and carbonate alteration. So we will be in here exploring as well along this trend. Block C, or target area C, on the southwest, in the southwest zone, on the southwest block of properties. Again, I showed you some photos in the previous slide. We have lots of indication of mineralization in this zone. There is some historical drilling that you can see, mostly concentrated here. We're working on compiling those drilling results and also the results of the assays from the grab samples that we just a few days ago sent to the assay lab. We'll have the results very soon, and we'll be able to better identify some drilling targets here too. I personally think that there's a lot of upside in this southwest zone. So to summarize, we have seriously advanced our exploration targeting program on the Kirkland West project. We have now defined, after compiling a lot of data and reviewing the data and doing a structural interpretation, we have identified key target zones there where we think we have just the right kinds of structures and rock types to find a deposit comparable to the type of deposit that we find that is known at Kirkland Lake. And we're ready to start drilling there in the near future, within the next 2 months. Okay. At Omega, we're also well advanced in our developing our understanding of the geology and also in developing exploration targets, and we'll be proceeding with that work. And we plan to start drilling there too in Q1 of next year. So thank you very much for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed this update. I hope you got lots of very interesting information to take away from this. I hope that you're as excited as we are about the projects that we have in the southern Abitibi belt, and it's going to be fun for us to do this exploration. And we look forward to providing you with results in the near future. Thanks again. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.